That film really gave me the confidence to do another film because I saw that you can do it. Even if you don't have a lot of money, even if you don't have a corporation behind you, you can do it. If you have a good idea and you have a good group of people, that's what's great about a documentary is you can have a small, 4 or 5 person group that's making it and have it look good.
First off, congratulations on This Is Gwar. I see it's being released at the Alamo Draft House, which is such a cool theater. I love that theater so much.
Yeah, we're very excited. We're very fortunate to have that opportunity, to have this small independent documentary actually get a small theatrical run, but not too small. We were hoping for 4 or 5 cities maybe, but it's 18 different theaters, and in a lot of them, we've got multiple screenings. So, 3
That's
to 5
awesome.
screenings at a bunch of them. So, yeah, we debuted the film at Fantastic Fest in 2021. So that's how we got that relationship with Alamo Draft House. And they were just very kind after that. They kept talking to us. And so they said, if you guys want a theatrical run, go for it. So we said, of course.
That's amazing, man. And so I guess that's a good place to start. I know you won the film fund in ScreenCraft back in 2018. Just curious what that process was like, how you found out about it, and how did it help, in your development of This Is Gwar?
Well, me and Bill Parks, my producing partner, when we first started this project, it was early on. We had filmed 1 round of interviews, so we were able to get kind of like a little trailer together, a little proof of concept together, which actually we were using to prove to Gwar that we were the right guys for the job. And, we were both fans of ScreenCraft. So whenever we saw that there was a, that we could submit, we were like, let's try it. The chances are low. But why not? Because we had never submitted, we didn't know what it was like to submit a documentary, not a script or something like that. This was something that we'd shot some interviews before, and it was this kind of just different, rather than saying, here's this script, help us get it made.
Yeah,
and so we kept getting through to the next level, and we're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. This will probably be it, and then we got to the next level and we're like, wow, that's great, but this is probably it. We're just honored. And then, we went up 3 or 4 levels, and then we found out that we won, and we're like, what? So it was really cool. It was really cool to get that grant, because that's everything to an independent filmmaker. Yeah, $10,000 to an independent filmmaker is huge. That's a huge part of the budget. So to get that right up front like that with really no strings attached was incredible. There's that much more. You make such little money with documentaries very often. It's kind of a gamble, with the way a lot of us do it, where you make it and then you hope you sell it in the end, which fortunately, we did. We sold it to Shudder, which is great. But at the time, we did not know that. So, every little bit of money you have to borrow from somebody else is money that you're going to have to pay back, oftentimes with interest, oftentimes with somebody that's going to want creative control, having a piece of the pie. So to have a company like ScreenCraft just say, here's $10,000, give us a credit at the beginning of the film. And that's it. You don't have to pay us back. We're not going to tell you how to do anything. Just here you go. Was really a dream come true. It was life-changing for making the documentary, because that gave us the ability to go get more interviews. And, the more momentum you have at the beginning, the easier it is to get going and going and going. Once you have a bunch of interviews, if you need to go get money for post-production, if you already have a bunch of great looking footage, it's that much easier. So the fact that we were able to use that $10,000 to get more interviews and get further down the road, it just helped us immensely.
That's awesome, man. And I really appreciate hearing you say that. That's amazing. Just that y'all, but not only that, but the way that you guys decided to use the money, I'm sure is a huge part of what helps build the success with it. But I am curious, the trailer for this is so cool. It looks so interesting. The band is awesome. We actually have someone on the team who's a huge fan of the band. What was your, how did you get this idea? What started the whole thing, very, very early on, what first got you interested in wanting to make this documentary? Because that's the thing too with ScreenCraft, is we have a lot of people just starting out with documentaries. They don't know where to start. even having the confidence with an idea to push with an idea. I'm just curious, like how you got started with it.
Well, I had done one documentary before. It's called The Orange Years, the Nickelodeon Story. It's a documentary about Nickelodeon where I got slime thrown on me during the creation of that, and then I got slime or whatever you want to call it dumped on me, squirted at me, spewed on me multiple times with this. So I guess that's my thing because there's not a lot of common threads between Nickelodeon and Gwar. But that film really gave me the confidence to do another film because I saw that you can do it. Even if you don't have a lot of money, even if you don't have a corporation behind you, you can do it. If you have a good idea and you have a good group of people, that's what's great about a documentary is you can have a small, 4 or 5 person group that's making it and have it look good. And so we kind of went in head first. We have a punk rock mentality. Our documentaries, we do not make for very much money. So that's another reason why I say $10,000 is life-changing because our budget is not usually a whole lot more than that. So it's really helpful. But I pride myself in, I don't think my documentaries look like they're low budget because, we all work for free and we all bust our butts and we sleep on couches or in vans or cars. And, we'll take the cheapest flights we can. However we can get there the cheapest way we'll do. But to answer your question, I know I've gone way around that, but
you're good, man.
After the first one, I just said, I have a list, a Google Doc that I can put on my phone because I'm super ADHD. And if I have an idea, I'll just be like, I'll write it in there. I have to write it immediately. And Gwar was one of those things. And what I'd kind of learned with brainstorming for the Orange Years is that there's a lot of things that seem like cool ideas to me, but there's no story there. There's no legs. It's just a lot of cool looking stuff. And that's it. Maybe it should be a short or something like that. But then I did some research and I saw that Gwar really had a really good story. And I said, okay, this is something that's cool that people will already be into. It's visually going to look awesome. And then there's a great story there. And then it turns out I had a friend named Rocky Moon who has a band called American Sharks, and they just happened to be opening up for Gwar. So it was kind of this serendipity where that's what I want to do. And he was opening up for him. So I said, can you pitch them to me? And so he said, yeah. And so I met with them and, they're such an awesome thing. And so many people have come to them throughout the years wanting to do docuseries, documentaries, TV shows, all of that stuff. And everybody kind of expects them to do the legwork. And so they really said, if you can prove to us that you can do this and you can put the work in, you got it. So I did a little 10-minute short that kind of showed them my vision. And they liked it, and so then we just did it.
That's so awesome, man. I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be released on Shudder, right?
That's right. Yeah,
theatrical release, and then it's going on Shudder. So I'm probably going to go see it at the Draft House, though. I got to say,
that's
love that
awesome.
Theater. Yeah. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Like you said, you did the first documentary, you did this one. What are your thoughts on the current climate of documentaries right now with streaming all over the place, like ScreenCraft? The documentary, doing features is what's most popular, but what is your thoughts on someone who's just starting out in film? Maybe they're in film school. What would you say to someone that might be interested in doing documentaries and any approaches? Like you could say, you work so hard, you take a small budget, but you put so much effort into making it. By the way, the trailer looks amazing. I would never think that it had that small of a budget, honestly, for seeing the trailer. But like all those things, just going into being resourceful. But your thoughts on documentaries today? Things are different than they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. What would you say to someone just getting started right now?
Yeah, and what's crazy is it's changing all the time. As I'm sure it always seems like there's every 6 months the course of documentary filmmaking is changing and what you can get and who's looking. For example, during the Orange Years, right when we were going to sell it, Amazon decided that they weren't going to take documentary films anymore, at least for a little while. So that took them out of the equation. So then it was that harder because the remaining people, which were like, Netflix and Hulu, knew that there was less options for us filmmakers, so they could be more picky. But that's one thing I would say is it's scary because it's always changing. And to me, it seems like you can do one of two things and they're opposite ends of the spectrum. You can either do what I do and try to just get a good group of people that all have their own skill, that can make it, someone that can shoot and make it look good, somebody that can edit it and make it look good, and then a couple of other people that can kind of fill in the gaps and make it for very little. So that way, if someone buys it for very little, you're okay. You can make your money back and maybe make a little bit for yourself. Or it seems like the only other option is to not make it with a big budget, but that seems to be what's scary right now. If you were to get, $200,000 and try to make a doc like that and then try to get that back, that's scary because it could happen. Yeah. It could not happen. It seems like you either have to do what I do, which is the micro budget and just make it look as good as you can, or have Netflix or Hulu or HBO hire you on to make the documentary for them. So it's got a home from the very beginning and you don't have to worry about all that, finding a distributor, finding an investor, your distributor, and your streaming platform are all the same person. So, I would say if you want to do it the way I do, which I have a lot of fun doing it that way, because there's not a lot of, people in my way, money people that are telling me what to do. It's just me and my friends doing cool stuff. And I mean, like
that's the thing. That's the thing, is having that freedom, being able to make those decisions and you're the one controlling the vision of it. Right. That's the cool thing.
I love it. And I would just say, you have to have zero ego, because you have to be willing to wear a bunch of different hats. And even if it's a hat that you're not good at wearing, you'll get good. There were a lot of different things. Like I did all the paperwork, filling out the grant stuff, filling out E&O insurance, filling out all of the fair use stuff, filling out everything, contracts for producers and investors, and making sure I got all the releases. That's not my forte,
Yeah.
It's more like
that's like a lot of people don't even think about those aspects when they're first getting started,
all of that stuff, managing the media, making sure everything gets offloaded off the cards at the end of the day, making sure that logistical, you have a location, and making sure that all your equipment that you need is there and is working. Usually you have different people that do all that stuff, like someone that's just in charge of taking the footage and putting it onto a hard drive and backing it up. And you and maybe 2 or 3 of your friends are doing that. And sometimes you have to go grab food for somebody, sometimes as the director, while your cinematographer and maybe somebody else are setting up the shot, you're going to get food for somebody. Your craft services, if you're somebody that's ever going to say, that's not really my job, then don't do it this way. Because everything is your job. I love that. You have to be able to do everything.
Yeah, that's such a good mentality. That's a great tip to have, I was going to say, what do you think it is? If you're okay with going over the time a little bit, I'd love to just ask.
I can go as long as you want. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm curious, what do you think it is that you're attracted to documentaries for? They're like, documentaries are a complete different animal than making a feature. It's a whole different thing. What is it about documentaries that you think you're drawn to?
Well, one, I think that you can make something that looks professional for a really small budget. If you have $20,000-$30,000 and you make a film, and you make a narrative film for that, it's difficult to make something that looks really pro. You can make something awesome. And if you're really creative, like you've got Blair Witch Project and stuff like that was made for nothing. It can be done. It's just really hard. Whereas, if you've got $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, you can make something that, one of my movies is on Hulu, one of them is on AMC Plus now. And I don't think that they look cheap. So that's one thing. And the other thing I think is cool, and a lot of it is just, I'm an editor by trade. That's what I love first and foremost. I was not the editor on Gwar, but I did help a lot with helping with post-production. But
yeah, I saw you do on your IMDb, you've done everything, you've done a little bit of everything. Like you're wearing all the hats.
I try to. And my thing is, I try to write at least one song on each documentary. I want that to be my thing. Kind of like, what was it? Like Alfred Hitchcock was like in at least one of his movies. Like, I don't want to be in it, but I want to have one of my songs in there. But I love editing. And I think, if you have a good editor, which I was very fortunate to work with Casey Pinkston, who's a dynamite editor. He's a director himself. He directed a movie called Red Dog that's on Hulu. And if you have a good editor and a good cinematographer, that's all that you need. So you could make a movie with 3 or 4 people, you know, a director, a cinematographer, an editor, and then maybe somebody else that's kind of a producer that just kind of fills in the gaps. And
Right.
that's what I love is you can keep a small crew. You get to travel. That's another thing that I love, you know. Living in Texas, I got to go to, you know, New York, LA, Richmond, Virginia, which is awesome, you know, Philadelphia, all these places I never would get to go. That's kind of what I consider my payment. You know, I don't make a lot of money, but I get to go to all these cool cities and hang out with really cool people. So all of those things I think are why I really love documentary filmmaking.
I love that. What are your thoughts on like iPhone filmmaking these days? Like, would you recommend someone shoot something with your phone if you don't have any money, you don't know where to start? Is that something that you would recommend to people who are just starting out? Like, grab your phone and go make something. That I'm hearing that more and more. You know, with people I've been talking with. What are your thoughts on
I
mobile
mean,
iPhone filmmaking?
yeah, I mean, I would say go for it. I mean, phones are looking so good these days. They really are. And it's, you know, it's not something that I know about. I don't know a lot about that. I always have like a pretty old smartphone. Like mine is always like 5 years old. But from what I hear, and, you know, the other thing is just making something. If you just make something, it will attract other people. All those things that you want to do will happen. Other people will start to get involved because you're doing the heavy lifting. So, you know, for example, with the Orange Years, we got Adam F. Goldberg of the Goldbergs to be a producer. And that was just because we did it. You know, we did not have that in the beginning. We never thought we would have that. But he saw that we were doing something cool and was like, oh, cool, I'll be a part of this. And that kind of stuff
Awesome.
happened, you know, with Gwar too. So yeah, that's what I would say is just start doing it. And if nothing else, you're going to learn how to do your craft. Even if your film doesn't, you know, get picked up or it doesn't make a bunch of money, your iPhone film, you still have learned to do stuff. And I bet you will catch somebody's eye. You will catch somebody's eye that will go, whoa, that's what they could do. And right now we're having people come to us now, finally, after 2 films saying, look at what you guys did with nothing. We want to come in and be a production company from the beginning because we saw what you guys did with nothing. We know what you can do with something. The Orange Years was filmed with a Sony A7 III. That's a mirrorless camera. That's ridiculous. And there are no rules. That's the thing. Like, you have a lot of people that say you can't do that. You know, you can't do that. You can't make a movie like that. And I always say, well, I mean, I did. And I know a lot of people that do. You know, there's these Netflix approved cameras. And yeah, if you get hired by Netflix to make a movie, yeah, that's what you should do. But I mean, like I said,
It's
I'm
funny that
living
you said
proof.
that. It's funny that you said that. That popped into my mind. I saw a video on YouTube the other day. What are your thoughts on that whole movement of Netflix, you having to have approved cameras? Is that something you think is good, bad, better for them? Just I'd love to get your thoughts on that. You'll probably have some. You'll have something on Netflix. I'm predicting you'll have something come out on Netflix. So curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, you know, that's their thing, that's their platform. And that is another thing to kind of answer this question and one of your other ones. A lot of these streaming platforms are not buying from other people as much. They certainly won't buy direct. Like, if you make a movie, you probably won't be able to sell it to Netflix or Hulu. Like, for example, for the Orange Years, we had to sell to Gravitas, who was amazing, and then they sold to Hulu. We approached Hulu and they were like, no. But
Gotcha.
you have to go through a distributor if you want to get on one of those. So you're seeing Netflix and places like that, they're buying less, they're buying not very much directly from the filmmakers, if anything. They want to make their own stuff, which, I mean, I get from their point of view because they can have quality control. They can make sure it looks good rather than buying from somebody else. I had some really good producer friends that helped me out with the Orange Years. They had Ghost Heads, which is a really cool Ghostbuster and Ghostbuster fan documentary, and Back in Time, which is a Back to the Future documentary.
I
And
love all of these documentaries you're talking about. That
they're
era, that era.
that era where it was like 2016, something like that, which is not that long ago. But the landscape was so different because they sold both of those. I think I could be wrong because I wasn't on those, but I think they sold them right to Netflix. They just made them and sold them right to Netflix for a lot of money. And that's not possible now.
Yeah,
So
it's not happening now. Not
it's
happening
not
anymore.
happening. So, you know, to answer your question, I mean, that's fine if that's what they want to do. If they want to say, here's the cameras, you have to, if you want to work for us, you have to use this camera. That's fine, because, you know, they're hiring you to do it. But that's what I would say is if Netflix hasn't, well, I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't mean that if you didn't use one of those cameras, your movie won't be on Netflix. That's not true. The only reason you have to pay attention to that is if Netflix calls you and says, I want you to make a movie for Netflix. Netflix, we are going to hire you and give you a budget. Then you can use that. If not, then who cares? Make it with your phone. Make it with a Sony mirrorless camera. It does not matter.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what was the like kind of first thing that you did, like way back, you know, way early on when you first started? What was that first thing you did that pushed you and got you momentum before the documentaries? Did you start with short films? Did you go to film school? Like, what got you that first kind of push of momentum?
It's really funny. Like, and that's another reason I say just jump in head first. The Orange Years was my first movie I ever made.
Oh, really? Wow.
It was, and
That's awesome.
We didn't know anybody at Nickelodeon. Like, it could have been, we did a crowdfund for it, and you know, me and Adam, we very well could have had nobody want to do it. You know, it was really risky. In hindsight, I'm glad I don't know what I know now, because I never would have done it. We just said, hey, let's get, you know, we did a crowdfund for $12,000, and we're like, let's just go make a Nickelodeon movie. And so that was really cool to just jump in head first. And I mean, it happens. And I'm not even a smart guy or a super talented guy. I just did it. And I think my bravery is probably, or bravery / stupidity is what has been my success. But to answer your question, where I did kind of learn stuff is I went to acting school. I went to an acting conservatory, but I was in Dallas, Texas. And and Dallas is a cool city, but it's a lot more like industrial looking stuff, training videos, commercials, where if you look like Ken or Barbie, you're going to get a lot of work. And for anybody watching this can see that's not me. And it's also not what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to do cool movies. I wanted to act in cool movies. So what me and some of my friends decided to do was, well, let's just make our own movies, and then we can cast ourselves in them and do whatever we want. So we started writing these little shorts or whatever. And then we would just be in them. And then as we would do that, I would work, you know, a little in front of the camera, a little behind the camera. And I fell in love with editing and all the stuff behind the camera. Editing was my first real love. I thought acting was, but editing, I just fell in love with it because you can tell a story there, and it's everything. Sure. Really, editors are the last writer. They really are writers. And I fell in love with it. And then to get to do documentary filmmaking, that's taking it to the next level, because really you are the writer. I think that any editor should be credited as the writer, really, because you are. And so that's kind of how I got my start. I never directed a movie. I worked on, we made these little movies and stuff, but that was where I learned what to do. And then I kind of fell in love with cinematography and learning how to do that. But after learning how to do all that, that's all I knew how to do. And I was like 30 years old. And I was like, well, I know how to work a camera. I know how to edit. I better start making some money. So I just was a freelancer, and I'd make anything. I'd film your wedding. I'd film your bar mitzvah. I'd film a corporate video. I'd film whatever. But that helped me learn. That helped me learn a lot, because I always filmed by myself. And that's what gave me the confidence to say, I know I can do a documentary. I know I can do it.
I had no idea that the Orange Years was like your first kind of thing, and you got started doing doing something, a crowdfunding. Do you think and that was in 2018? You did the Orange Years?
Yes. We got it crowdfunded in 2017, and then we basically filmed all throughout 2017, and then through 2018 we were finishing editing it, and then also trying to find a home for it.
Gotcha. So like, man, that's so inspiring to think that you had this idea, crowdfund. Is that something that you would say right now, still in this climate, like that's something that we should be trying to do? Like me as a young filmmaker wanting to make my first short or whatever, should I be trying to leverage getting online and putting the idea out there and doing crowdfunding?
I would say absolutely, because it's a lot like the ScreenCraft grant that we got from y'all. You don't have to pay it back. You know, if
Yeah.
you think about it, if you make a documentary for $100,000 and then you sell it for $100,000, you've washed. It's nothing. You know, whereas if you can get $20,000-$30,000 from a crowd fund, and you can make it well, you know, then you can it's a lot better, you know, rather than having to pay back an investor. You certainly have to pay off your perks, but if you're smart with your perks and they don't break the bank, I see a lot of people giving these really cool perks out, but it's like, you think that you're helping your backers, but you're actually hurting them, because all the money that you get, you're going to spend on perks, and then you don't make a movie, or which is what they wanted. They are investing in the movie and they're not going to get it. You see a lot of crowd funds that the movie never gets made, and that sucks. But I would say do it. It's awesome. The thing I would just say is be prepared for it. It's a lot of work. I have a love-hate relationship. Like on the next one, I want to do one again because it is great, but it's a full-time job. I would say if you have somebody who can, who's good at it, manage it, and 2 or 3 of you manage it, you've got to have articles written up about you from the very beginning for it to work. If you're just throwing it out there to your friends, and then you're like, oh, but my friends will share it with their friends, and then they'll share it. Like the Orange Years never went viral. We thought that it would. We thought that it would go viral because it's Nickelodeon and that's 90s nostalgia, and it just didn't. It did a little bit, but not. It never blew up the way we wanted. I mean, we only got $12,000, but you know, you're seeing people like there's a Hellboy documentary that somebody's making now about Mike Mignola, and it's well into 6 figures what they made. Well into 6 figures. There's another group of folks that do In Search of Darkness. In Search of is like their brand, like they have In Search of Last Action Hero, In Search of Darkness, In Search of Tomorrow, and it's just about like 80s horror, 80s action, 80s sci-fi. And you look at what they do, they market it, and they get the moment their crowdfund launches, they get written up everywhere. They have a PR machine that can get them there. They have a PR machine that can get them out there, and then they'll clean up. They'll make $200,000 off of a crowdfund. At that point, at that point, who cares if you even sell it? If you sell it, that's just, you know, if you sell it for $20,000, you're fine. You know, you can pay all your crew and investors off with that. So, I mean, and that is one thing that's good about documentaries is if you're not an established filmmaker, so people aren't going to be like, oh, there's a new Scott Barber film out there, I want to invest in it. That's not going to happen. But it's like, oh, there's a Nickelodeon documentary. Oh, there's a Gwar documentary. You're essentially leveraging their appeal, their popularity, which I think helps. I think for an independent filmmaker, it would be tough. But I would say even if you get $5,000, you know, that's $5,000 that you don't have to pay back outside of the perks. And I would just say any way that you can, you know, if you are making an independent film, maybe try to get an actor that's popular to be in it. You know, have something that if you don't have a name yet, have somebody involved that does have a name. You know, have a producer, an actor, or something like that has a name that will be in it that you can leverage their popularity.
Gotcha. And then I have another. Sorry, I'm just like I could ask you a million questions. What are your thoughts on? Because I'm from Texas too. I'm actually in LA now, but I'm from Texas. But what are your thoughts or any advice or tips that you have for people who aren't in a city or aren't in a location that's kind of, you know, populated with a bunch of filmmakers?
I will say that's the ups and downs of being somewhere else. You know, on one hand, because I'm not in LA, I can do everything way cheaper than people in LA can do. I can find all of that stuff cheaper. And, you know, I can have an office or whatever for no money, you know, compared to one of the cooler. That's the trade-off. You know, you live in a cool city, it costs you money. You know, I live in a place that's really cheap, but I'm not going to go to a bar and happen to run into, you know, whoever, you know, a high up at Netflix. So I have a really sweet setup going where my producing partner is a guy named Bill Parks, and he is in LA, and he's like man about town in LA. He produces documentaries.
Awesome.
He's he does production. He has a event company. He's an actor. He's been on all sorts of shows. So we work really well together because I can get stuff done for cheap. I'm not going to meet anybody cool. That's not true. I'm going to meet a lot of people cool. I'm not going to meet somebody
like
big.
someone big, like
Right.
not an executive or a big actor
Right.
or something that walks into a bar.
Although the upside of it, though, and this is how it worked on both of my films, is people, when you give someone a producer credit and they're from Texas, that means they get to be part of a movie. Like there's less opportunities to say I'm part of a movie. So
Very
if
true.
you find somebody that has money, that maybe they're not in the movie industry at all. They're a doctor or a lawyer or something, and you know them. Just be like, hey, if you give me $5,000, you're an executive producer on a real movie, and and that helps a lot. So that is another cool thing about living in a not so, I don't want to say cool, because these cities are cool, but
yeah, I'm missing Texas, man. It's getting crazy out here in LA. It is expensive. I'm like, man, I'm missing Texas right now.
Like, shout out to Texas. It's not what people think. As long as you're in a city, you're fine. People think that it's this super, like overly right-wing place. And I guess as a whole it is, but not, if you're living in a city, it's not like that.
Yeah, and it's just different from town to town. And also the people you hang out with, who are your friends there. That is a big part of it too,
Right. Because I mean, Houston is the most diverse city in the country.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool,
Yeah.
But so that's what I would say. Me and Bill have this great relationship where he ran into somebody from Happy Madison the other day, just bumped into him organically. It wasn't like he was trying to hit them up to sell them something. He ran into him and they started up a convo. So that's what I would say, is find someone to work with that is in one of those cities. And I will say it's easier than you think, especially if you're going to do the hard work. Who wouldn't want to do that? Say, hey, give me a producer credit. You film it, you edit it, you do all the hard work. I'll just try to find people in LA for you. I'll look around. Who wouldn't do that? Because it's low risk, high reward. They're not going to put a lot of money. They're not going to put a lot of time into it. But if the film does well, now all of a sudden they're a producer with a film on Hulu or Netflix. And so, that's what I've done with all my movies. I just start calling up people who did something I think is cool and say, would you want to work together?
That's what I was about to ask you. Like that's exactly what I was about to ask you. Like, Bill, how did you form that relationship with him? Or what are your tips for, I hate the word networking is one of those words. It's like overused, but how would someone who doesn't have any connections go about forming real relationships with people?
And that's another thing about documentary filmmaking. The community is so awesome. Everybody I've met, for the most part, has been really cool. So everyone I reached out to was super cool and welcomed me with open arms. The thing I would say is people can smell your intentions, particularly people that are further along in their career, because they have people brown nosing them, trying to network. I never looked at it as networking. I looked at it as learning. Like, I want to know how to do this. I'm not trying to become your friend just so then I can pitch you an idea and you can make it for me, or I'm not asking you to do the work for me. I'm just asking you to, help answer some questions. And as you can tell right now from this conversation, filmmakers love talking about what they've done, because you don't get a lot of money. So to have people actually be interested in you is pretty cool. So they love talking about it, and they usually love sharing the love because it was shared to them. So, I reached out to Lee Leshin, who was an executive producer on Back in Time and Ghost Heads, and he was super cool and was a producer on The Orange Years. I reached out to a guy named Tommy Avalone, who had done a movie called I Am Santa Claus. He had worked on Ghost Heads. He did the Bill Murray stories, which is on Netflix. He was very cool. And then I reached out to Bill and all these people. And I wasn't trying to network. I wasn't trying to, I want to get in good with you so you can. I was legitimately going, how the hell did you do that? Because I want to do it. How did you do it? And as long as you're not asking them to do the work, that was Adam F. Goldberg. We were never like, with him, when we were so fortunate to get to work with him, we weren't like, help us make this. He was impressed by the fact that we were doing all the heavy lifting and we didn't ask a lot from him. It's like, hey, can you book a couple of interviews for us, make a couple of calls for us? And that was it. And, and we had similar interests. If, like I said, people can smell from a mile away. If it's genuine and you really just want to become buds with somebody and pick their brain, they can tell. If you're just trying to, all you're looking at them for is a piece of meat, a connection, then they're going to blow you off.
That's good advice. I mean, that's the best way. I mean, a lot of people say that, and it's it's getting to the truth of it. Like, people can smell your intentions. Like you said, I think that's the best like advice, you know. I'm curious, I saw on your IMDb American Clown. Are you allowed to talk about that at all?
Yeah.
Your
Oh,
upcoming
absolutely.
project?
Yeah,
I'd love
absolutely.
to know a little bit about that. Is that another documentary?
Mm-hmm. It is, and it's really cool. I'm really excited about that. That's one that I am again working on with Bill, and a really cool guy named Guilford Adams, who's out in LA, and he's a clown. And this was one that is really I'm having fun working on it because it's not my baby. Both the Orange Years, that was me and my directing partner Adam. That was our baby together, but it was our
Gotcha.
baby. You know, we
Yeah, yeah.
conceptualize it. It meant a lot to us, and not that American Clown doesn't mean anything to it. It means a lot to me. And then
Yeah.
Gwar was my baby too. But these guys already had this documentary going, and then
Gotcha.
they had kind of seen what I had done, and they had said, "Do you want to come on and help?" And that was really cool. I'm always looking at my documentaries for a fresh set of eyes. You know, I like my editor for Gwar, Casey, was not in any of the filming. He didn't do any of it, so he was a fresh set of eyes. He wasn't thinking about, oh, that guy's a cool guy, I want to put him in it more, like I might be inclined to do. And the editor, one of the editors, I edited and Sean Cawthon edited, but one of the other editors was a guy named Bradford Thomason, who just did a Reading Rainbow doc that's incredible. He wasn't
I have to check that out.
It's
Reading Rainbow doc, dude.
It is
Reading
so
Rainbow.
good.
Yeah, so nostalgic.
So good. Like, you'll cry. It's so
I'll
good.
check it out.
But you know, both of those guys that were the primary editors weren't present for any of filmmaking or of the filming. And I'm not saying you have to do that. I just always wanted that because they were just looking at it from an editor standpoint. So it's cool for me to become a fresh set of eyes because Guilford is a clown, and essentially the premise of it is it's a lot like Gwar. It's taking a different look at something that's always been there, but you never thought about it. And clowning, you know, you think of it as, I mean, first of all, now you think of it as scary as hell. You think of Pennywise and American Horror Story. Or you think of it just as somebody that decided to put on a nose and put some makeup on and go do kids' parties. But it's actually an art form, an old art form that's been around forever, since Shakespeare. You know, there were clowns in Shakespeare. And what would you do? We all feel like there's something we were put on this earth to do, whether it's filmmaking or music or being a father, whatever it is that you feel like, oh, this is why I'm here. This is part of me. What if that thing was kind of going away? Like, what would you do? You know, you could still do it, but you couldn't make any money at it, and it's not respected, and you might not have opportunities to do it. There's a whole clown college. There's the Ringling Brothers Clown College that people would go to and study. And, you know, Ringling Brothers is not a thing anymore. And so it's
like, when
crazy.
you put it like that. Yeah, when you put it like that, especially when you put it like the younger generation coming up, all they know is like horror, thriller, Pennywise. And it's like, it's crazy when you put it like that. It really makes you think. It makes you think about it in a completely different way, you know?
Yeah. What would you do? And so Guilford is, of course, very passionate about it because he's living that story. He's in the documentary. And so it was so for me to come in and going, I don't know anything about the world of clowns. I have no idea. And they had already shot a bunch of it. Is really cool for me to kind of be an outsider looking in is really a treat for me.
Really appreciate it, man.
Okay.
This was awesome.
I'll
talk to you soon.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the time you gave me.
Man.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Bye. See you later.
Talk to you later.